Well, hello there, friends. I'm going to check one more time that the camera's lined up because today is a 101 for a job you're going to have to do in Alaska, living off the grid, if you want to heat your house for almost free, which is splitting firewood. My intro video, of course, I talked about what I want to do on the channel, but today I thought I'd just talk about splitting wood. And for the majority of it, I'm going to use my bigger maul. This is I think it's an 8-pounder. And so I use the weight of your maul to split things. You've got to use the weight of your axe more than strength. So it's a bit about technique. Something like this guy, not near as strong or tough, and this would not do the job. It should go without reason or guess why you wouldn't use a little fireman's axe. I use this to clear brush and stuff in the summer, but think about bouncing this off a piece of wood and how badly that will go from the beginning. And lastly, I'll show my little tomahawk hammer axe. This is useful for cutting small stuff, but something like this, you're probably going to break your axe or your hand before you do anything else. But okay, here we go. So I selected a few hardwood and softwoods, and a few of these chops won't go perfectly, but that's the point, to try to show you kind of what goes into the technique, and I'm saving the biggest, hardest piece of wood for last. So, longer pieces like this are about the limit of any stove. I've got a nice long stove, but something like this, dead center, straight and true. Now, put a bit more strength into that, but I didn't use technique. I want to show you the technique to add a bit more of my body weight into the cut. So I got to balance this up there. Just doesn't want to stay. Balancing your wood is half the art. Okay, what I like to do is a stable footing. Now, position, okay, I know where the axe is going to land. But when I come back up, I like to raise my foot just a little bit. So I'm putting that body weight in. And that split very nicely. Perfect piece of firewood. This spruce is super dry. And when you cut oblong weird pieces, you get free kindling. So maybe I don't have to end up cutting so much kindling in the end. Now, this is, again, a piece of spruce. And it's about equal to this guy, okay? But he's cottonwood. This is a harder wood. It'll burn hotter. It's more efficient in the stove than the spruce. So I'm going to try to hit them at the equal chop, and you'll see how they split. Okay? Now that was good, but I didn't shatter it, which is actually something you don't want to do. If you shatter the wood, you now have two pieces of wood on the ground, right? Instead, if I now hit this again in the same spot, but I've rotated the log, if I do it just right, look at that. I've got 4 nice pieces of wood, and it's still holding together. So I'll give it one more spin. This will break it all apart. And now I have 5 perfectly split apart pieces of firewood. So I got 5 pieces for 3 strikes. Now, a little bit thinner, but let's see the cottonwood. Let's see how he goes. I'll try to hit him about the same equal strike. Again, lift that foot just for a little bit more oomph in the drop. And he just popped. Okay. I was kind of hoping he'd be sticking together, but that's okay. The colder it is outside, the more your firewood's gonna pop. It's just more brittle. So in the summertime, you definitely can get quite sweaty, work up a sweat, splitting firewood. In the winter, not so much, depending on how much you're doing. Okay, so again, drop that foot right as I strike. I'm adding a little more energy, and I'm saving my arms. All right. So here, Got a very nice piece of dry birch. This birch bark, I'll leave it on. Random pieces end up in the wood box. I'll take those and use them again for kindling. They are by far the #1 best fire starter on this planet is dry birch bark, paper birch. And this will burn very hot. Even if it's wet, it'll start on fire. So if you were in that worst case scenario, trapped in the wilderness, one match, what are you going to use on your match, with your match? Birch bark, every time. Okay, so I'm going to do something I would say is bad behavior. I'm going to strike this in the dead center, and you're going to see it sink in rather than where I should hit it, which is on the edges. When you have a large round, each strike, each piece you knock off, makes the block easier to then take down. But if you start in the center, okay, I didn't break anything, I didn't split anything, but I'm stuck in there. So if I hit my edges, that was the same amount of strength, same strike, but I now have a piece of firewood. So you just edge it. Now that was a little bit of a bad hit. Kind of got an oblong. And when you have odd random pieces of firewood going off, you got to be careful because it can send splinters and pieces of wood. So that's again why I'm wearing sunglasses for this job. It's not to look cool. It is important, although I admit I split firewood far too often without safety equipment on, but wear your glasses. And these are glacier glasses that have the little edges around. They don't work so well for actual ice climbing, I've discovered, but they get too foggy, even in extreme cold. There's a problem with a lot of glacier glasses. But for safety, for wind, if you're not working up a big sweat, glacier glasses do actually a fairly good job. So, and you look kind of cool. Cooler than normal sunglasses maybe, depending on your preference. Okay, so we're back to a normal piece of spruce. A log this size will burn better if it's split, but there's no reason at this size I couldn't throw it into the stove. But with spruce, it's better to have a crisscross in that fire so that there's more air breathing and you get an overall burn. You're getting more heat. If this smolders in the stove all night, yes, I will have a fire in the morning, but I won't have gotten so much heat, and it just kind of, if it burns like an ember, that's not the best use of my resource. So I didn't hit that as perfectly straight on as I would have liked, but nevertheless I got a good small piece of firewood. This piece is actually, that's perfectly good. Leaving pieces of firewood big in the stove isn't a bad thing. It means they tend to last a bit longer. So a little round like this. Yeah, I had this guy as an example. So as you can imagine, when this spruce was felled, this was the cut, right? You do the notch and then you do the back cut. So here you're looking at the notch and then the back cut, and this tree then fell in the direction it was supposed to. This was the stump and it was cut. Now, what can you think about this? What could be dangerous about this piece of firewood? The main one would be to take this axe straight on, drop it, but think about how this is going to hit the handle. I have a very nice axe that I was gifted by a very good friend that is ruined because I have broken that from hitting random angles of wood when you don't cut a straight piece of firewood. So, just something to be aware of. And that's why fiberglass metal reinforced handles on an axe, when you're choosing what kind of tool you want to use, very, very important. Okay, and that perfectly broke. And no worries, no damage to my axe. These These longer guys, they're a bit harder to hit sometimes because of the angle of the top. But no worries. So most firewood you want to split at least one time, but depending on what you got. One, two, three, whatever's clever and whatever fits your stove. There's no perfect stove. Every stove operates very differently, and you've got to play with it and work with it, because you don't want to burn your stove too hot, and you don't want your fire to smoke or smolder, because you'll end up having other problems. And these glasses are actually fogging up now. And it's not all that cold. It's about, it's only a few degrees below freezing. Somewhere in the 20 Fahrenheit, maybe -2, 3 Celsius. That's a bit harder piece of wood. And you'll always find that once in a while your wood doesn't split because of burls. So take a look at this log. You can see these little nubs of sticks. And that's what stopped that strike from going all the way through. But that's not a bad thing, actually. So you give it another go at a different angle. Okay, now I'm split. Okay, so I've got a few random smaller pieces. I could easily push that apart with my fingers. But rather than do that, I'll do it one more time. And I might get a few free pieces of kindling out of this. And you also noticed on that hit, my axe handle hit a bit of the wood. And so I felt a little bit of a jolt, and the axe came back up. So always account for that, because the axe won't always sink. And this next piece is the final piece, a bit tougher piece, and it'll illustrate a few more problems and things to think about while splitting wood, but certainly not impossible. So your big rounds, these guys are heavy. This is a good tree hug, so what would the circumference of that be? I don't know. Pretty big, pretty good. Actually, my glasses are fogging up. It's kind of frustrating. But the cool thing about glacier glasses, you drop them on your nose for a minute, they air out, you can see again. So I'll just give it a second. When I look at this piece of wood, I see several good and bad things. One, it's dry, pretty dry, relatively. This was a splitting block before, so when you're splitting wood, you can't split anything bigger than the block below. And eventually your splitting block will break and die at some point from the continued small chops and the energy being put through your splitting piece. But for the technique of this kind of log, I'll just do it as an example. Okay, I'm going to hit it dead center as hard as I can, all right? Which is not going to split this piece of wood. Oops. Actually, I did. Okay, well, when you're making a video about splitting firewood, stick your foot in your mouth, I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, that wasn't on purpose. Oh, it's a bit drier than I thought. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Okay, well, that didn't go to plan, but what does in the wilderness? All right. So, I've got a few oblong shapes, so let's just make it efficient. I want lots of little pieces of dry birch to be kindling, small wood, quick fire, heat my stove up, etc. So, it's not always easy, but if you hit these kind of gentle, you can end up not knocking the main piece off the block every time. If you're going to cut kindling, you should probably go to a smaller axe, but this axe, this is so much drier than I thought. Look at all those nice pieces of kindling. Shouldn't have my thumb up on the top. better to have my hands clear of anywhere the axe could hit, so kind of the edge, and if you've got to hold it because it won't balance, give it a quick let go and give it your best. This is way drier than I thought. It's got ice built up all on the outside because of being in the shed. There's been some trickle of water. So some of my pieces of firewood have ice built up on them. Something like that, thin and skinny. Here's my kindling sticks. All right, perfect. Same thing with this kind of half moon shape. That's cool. This is plenty of kindling. This will last me a very long time. Just don't want to lose a finger. So be slow, be safe. Use the weight to do the work. That wasn't about my strength. That was all about just dropping that poundage right on the tip, or the edge of the axe's blade, and going from there. I really thought I'd sink it and it'd just be stuck, and I'd show you how to pull an axe out of a frozen piece of wood, but that didn't quite work out. So I could make maybe 3 nice pieces of firewood easily, but I'm gonna try going lengthwise on this hit. Kind of cut with the grain if you can, and this will give me potentially more of these nice little fire starter sticks that'll burn real hot. So you just got to look at your wood. You don't have to be in a hurry. Just go slow, go smart. Yeah, it's kind of breaking funny, so I'll just... Oh, that was embarrassing. But don't be embarrassed if you don't break a piece of wood the first time. It's something that like any outdoor job or workout or whatever, you just get better with practice. And you're certainly going to get a lot of practice if you're living in Alaska. Look at that. Look how frozen it is on the edge. Kind of hard to safely... That's the problem with this now, right? It's kind of a weird shape. It's a bit rough. If I hit it kind of on these edges, I'll have little pieces coming off. I'll try to strike this real true and safely. And try to get one more piece. There we go. Yeah, so there we go. Those are nice big pieces of firewood. They'll work just fine like that. I don't think my wood box is big enough for all the wood I've split here. So, yeah, that's about it for today. So that's just a 101 on axes and splitting wood, the work that goes into it. When I pick all this up and throw her in, that's looking like a day and a half worth of wood, especially considering this birch lasts about twice the length of the spruce. The last few days, just being a bit below freezing, the bus has been getting too hot with the fire going all the time. It's been in the high 60s and 70s, and I think that's too hot for my bus. I don't feel comfortable in there when it's that warm. It needs a little cooler. So, yeah. Other last things for wood. Yeah, although it looks cool, when you stick an axe into your splitting block, you're kind of making it kind of tough to last as a splitting block. And this guy, he's really frozen, and so that's why, right, a relatively gentle chop, it's not even going in. That's wet frozen wood. And you're going to know that your firewood is wet if you're trying to split it, if you have that effect. So I'll do it one more time. Yeah, look at that. I can't stick it in. So, yeah. All right, well, that's a basic tutorial. I think that's everything you need to know to split firewood. So stay safe. Remember, wear your goggles. Wear good gloves, good boots, good pants. Something that'll protect you from whatever hits you. And yeah, I'm going to go make a fire and make some dinner here soon. So have a great day, everyone.